Good evening and welcome again to Ideas at Work and Beyond. We have a very, very exciting show. I wish I could say that a United States Senator will be joining us right here in our studio, but he won't. Senator Chris Dodd had to have a rendezvous with Al Robinson at an undisclosed location. No one knows where this took place, but Al Robinson got some pretty interesting questions answered by our United States Senator Chris Dodd. So we have that. Also, we revisit Bethel, Connecticut. But this time, we're not going for the mudslinging that you see in one party, but we have one guy named Knickerbocker who's kind of rising above the fray, watching others eat their young and fight among themselves, and he's hoping that he's going to ride this crest of civility into the First Selectman's office in Bethel. So we have that coming up. But first, I want to do a shameless plug. Walnut Hill Community Church, I actually teach an adult Sunday school class there on Sundays. It's at 9:30 in room D5, and we're going to be looking at this book called Experiencing God by Henry Blackaby and Claude King. It's a classic. It's a good book. It's a 8-week course, so I hope you come out. If you like what you watch on this show and you want to see it live in living color, come to Walnut Hill Community Church, 9:30. Just Google it. It's over there on Walnut Hill Road in Bethel, and hope you'll join us. Now, I want to go to the telestrator here. We're going to be talking about Senator Chris Dodd, and we're going to go to the telestrator. Hold on one second while I get the mic right. This is public access television, so it's not always the most efficient. But in the past, we've had economist Nick Perna on, and during that time, I've tried to kind of map out. Now, the way my mind thinks is sort of in large, bold colors. But we have Senator Dodd. Now, Senator Dodd has a couple issues. One I would title Countrywide, the other I would title The Cottage, and the final one is an overall sense of corruption. I think when you look at what's going on in our country right now, there's concern about corruption in the highest levels in the U.S. government. And we see this a lot with Senator Dodd, and it starts with his involvement with Countrywide. But before you can really understand what's going on with Countrywide, you have to look at the overall picture of what happened to our economy. Now, for those of you who watched the show with Nick Perna, you saw we talked about some of these issues. Here we have Senator Dodd. I don't know if we can get a close-up of that, but this is going to become vitally important. Senator Dodd, he's a fine senator. You know, sometimes I think when you're growing up, there are just certain people in town that are sort of authority figures. Senator Dodd is that for me. He's kind of always been the senator. And to say that there's any problem with Senator Dodd, to me, is comparable to saying that the emperor wears no clothes. And it wasn't just Senator Dodd, but it was his father behind him. I don't know if we had that picture of his father. His father was a senator. So in a sense, he was handing down the United States Senate seat to his son. His father was also a great prosecutor during the Nuremberg trials and was a great man in and of himself. So when you think about the senators in Connecticut, it's like Dodd's just always been there. How can you question him? But here we go. Senator Dodd, he's in the Senate. This is the Senate building here. And he's the head of the Banking Commission. That will become important. Because the Banking Commission says, you know what we need to do? We need to have some we need to have some subprime mortgages. So they come up with this concept that they're going to have subprime mortgages, and they're going to put these mortgages in the hands of people that couldn't otherwise afford a house, and that makes them very happy, and oh, by the way, they vote the congressman back in place. But the problem is these bankers, and I'll put sort of like a hat on the banker there, these bankers are really happy because they're selling these mortgages to folks that can't really afford it, who, oh, by the way, end up foreclosing on their mortgages and their happy face turns to a sad face. But they're making a ton of money because they can sell these mortgages and give it to this outfit called Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Now, these are banks set up by the United States government. And they're funded by the government. And the banks will say, you sell the mortgage to this lady who can't really afford it, don't worry, because we're going to buy that mortgage off you. You're going to make money, we're going to make money because the government's going to keep feeding us money. She'll be happy for a while because she'll have a house until she forecloses on it, and everything should be fine. Now, who comes up with this idea? Why, it's the United States Banking Committee, the United States Senate Banking Committee. And who receives the biggest donations from Freddie and Fannie? I don't know. Let's go to the illustration. Do we have that list of the top money receivers and donations? Hopefully we have that queued up. Because what you'll find is that a lot of campaign contributions, if you look at the top there, you have Christopher Dodd, and I believe that's Barack Obama at the top. And it goes down from there, a guy named John Kerry, who's in Massachusetts. These guys are getting hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah, Al Robinson is pointing out some Republicans after that, but I'm focusing on the top of the ticket, if you will. So Freddie and Fannie Mae, this bank that's absorbing all these nonsense mortgages that these guys right here are putting out, are funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars into campaign donations right back to the senator from Connecticut, Senator Dodd. But wait, hold on, those of you viewing at home, because we want to take a little bit closer look at these bankers. These bankers are coming in, going nudge, nudge, wink, wink. They're putting together mortgages for people that couldn't otherwise afford them. And guess who the #1 banker that was doing this? This outfit, you might remember, Countrywide. That's right, Countrywide banks were one of the biggest banks in this subprime mortgage mess. They would sell it to people. They would dump these pieces of paper off on Fannie Mae, who would gladly buy it up, a quasi-governmental bank, and oh, by the way, they were funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars of campaign donations to Senator Dodd. Now, Countrywide, as the plot unfolds, if you will, also gave money to Congressman or Senator Dodd in the form of sweetheart deals. As a matter of fact, they even called them Countrywide. A guy named Angelo Mozzelli, who was the head of it, put together a program for VIPs. See Senator Dodd, and they were called Friends of Angelo. And Friends of Angelo got great sweetheart deals on their mortgages, of which Senator Dodd had 2. So here you have the flow of corruption. The head guy from Deep Throat during the Watergate era said, follow the money, follow the money. Well, the money is going from Freddie Mac into the campaign coffers of those willing politicians that are willing to underwrite this. And in Dodd's case, it's also going from these bankers that were making out like banshees, also going back to Christopher Dodd in the form of campaign donations and also in the form of mortgages that were certainly sweetheart deals. There's one other issue that I wanted to talk about in relation to Christopher Dodd, and that is a cottage. If we can get a close-up of this. Senator Dodd, I don't know if you got this on, we didn't pre-paste that. But Senator Dodd came up with $12,000 that he put up on this cottage. Now, this cottage is located in an area of on an island in Ireland, and some speculate it's a very wealthy area. Some speculate that this is now in the neighborhood worth about $1 million. Next door neighbors include members of the rock and roll band U2. And others. But he put up about $12,000 for this, had a sweetheart mortgage from another gentleman, and I'm going to just read from that. The other gentleman was someone who was involved in some corruption as well. Hold on one second. A guy by the name of Mr. Dowd. He was a business partner in a firm that was later convicted of bank fraud. And oh, by the way, that corrupt businessman that helped him get this cottage was later pardoned by none other than President Bush. So this is our senator. We have some pictures of him, and we're going to be hearing from him. He's a senator in Connecticut that we've always sort of lived under and admired and respected. But when you scratch the surface, there's some really bad issues related to Senator Dodd that I think he has to answer for. And when he does answer for it, it's going to be in the form of a campaign that's going to unfold in the next 14 months. And I will say that there's some Republicans that will be running against Senator Dodd who are worthy of another look. So we looked at tonight corruption, cottages, and countrywide. And that's what Senator Dodd has to answer for. So that concludes our show and tell portion of the show. And now, joining me is Al Robinson, who will set this all straight and tell us where the real issues are regarding Senator Dodd.
Let me think. What was that term I used with you a few weeks ago? I'm trying to think what it was. Crap?
Crap.
That's
I mean,
what
this is public access. We are on a bit of a delay.
I can go a little more blue if I want.
No, you can't go blue. You can't go blue. They'll cut our salary, and we'll be cut off. Well, what part of that was
Well, let's see. I think in terms of the VIP, I think there was a probe that was done by the Senate Ethics Board or some organization in the Senate that founded that.
You know,
Senator Dodd did get no sweetheart deal.
Funny you should mention the Senate Ethics Board that was reviewing this, because there's a guy named Adolphus Town, a Democrat from New York, and guess who also got 2 VIP mortgages and had the information subpoenaed from Countrywide and was as well a friend of Angelo. That would be Adolphus Towns, and some have referred to that as the fox guarding the henhouse. But yes.
Now, is that from a Rob Simmons press release?
This was from a Rob Simmons press release.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So, does that make it not true?
I would say a lot of that stuff is not true. I would like to see a bipartisan committee, which was done in Washington, found that no wrongdoing was done by Senator Dodd.
Really?
Do you have that report?
I don't have that report. I just got all the negative stuff here.
You got campaign press releases, but you don't have the report that.
No, I have pictures. I did reviews of Mr. Dodd's fathers. I've got drawings. I have a lot. I have a lot of information. But I would say yes, this happens to be a press release from Rob Simmons, who, by the way, may be running against Senator Dodd.
Well, that doesn't mean Linda McMahon has anything to do with it.
What's that?
Not if Linda McMahon has anything to do with it.
Well, you know, I believe she's running
spending a lot of money. Spending a lot of money. Can't wait to see those quarter reports from Rob Simmons this next couple of weeks.
No, I think his goal was to raise $150,000, and I think he raised $154,000.
He raised $146,000 online.
Oh, I saw $154,000. Either way, he's chugging along.
Next to Linda McMahon's numbers.
Well, Linda McMahon can just write a big check.
Yeah, she's writing a lot of big checks, a lot of TV appearances, a lot of commercials. I love it.
Well, you know,
I want to have the WWE Republican nominee. They got all her money from TNA.
Well,
against Chris Dodd.
Look,
you got to love that.
Political dynasties have often been built on great wealth. You need look no further than Joseph Kennedy, who made a ton of money, and the next generations he underwrote campaigns. The classic example of that was The Joke, where John Kennedy was saying that he was running for Congress, I think it was, and Joe, the dad, was writing the checks to underwrite it, and he said, you know, I don't want you spending too much money. He said, I want to win this election, but I'll be damned if I'm going to pay for a landslide.
All right.
Which was pretty funny.
That's very funny.
So the Kennedys, you know,
that Chicago money he dumped in, got that presidential campaign back in '60, I think it was.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Chicago
true.
money.
Yeah, no, the Daily, all of a sudden there were a lot of votes from Cook County that just appeared. No one quite knows, and there was something having to do with West Virginia and some of our friends in some organized crime, which I really don't know anything about, and I got nothing but love.
That's not on me.
So, anyways, yeah. So I think if nothing else, Senator Dodd has a lot to answer for, and it's going to be a pretty interesting, extremely closely watched Senate race right here in Connecticut. The Republicans will have their primary. I would imagine the Democrats are gonna vote for
Merrick Alpert.
Is that?
We're going to vote for Merrick Alpert. Of course, it's going to be Chris Dodd.
Yeah. Okay.
You Republicans are going to eat your own as you're doing right now. There's not a whole lot of money to go around right now. And again, Linda McMahon is spending a lot of money doing a lot of TV ads, a lot of full-page ads in newspapers. That's a lot of cash he's throwing out there, and that's going to make the primary a real bloodbath. And you have all these Republicans out there running. It's only so much money to go around, and you know the Republican Party in Connecticut is not like a big money machine here.
I
got some problems there.
Look, a primary I think is healthy. That's our process.
No, absolutely.
Let the ideas. I mean, we're going to have these Sam Caligiuri.
He's a Republican. You should know his name.
I know. I have trouble
Sam
with
Caligiuri. He is a state senator from the Waterbury area.
He will be appearing on this show, and he is running for the Senate. I think I've met him. I think he's a very impressive guy. He's done some good things in Waterbury.
You got some other Republican that hasn't spent a day in Connecticut or hasn't done a TV show.
You're talking about Chris Dodd, who registered his kids in school in Iowa? Is that
I'm talking about your buddy, Mr. Schiff. Schiff is his name? Yeah. He hasn't spent a day in Connecticut at all, but he's running for Senate. How is he representing Connecticut if he's not even in Connecticut?
Well, that's where the primary sort of sorts all this stuff out, because he'll have to answer that. But you do have someone, a favorite son like Rob Simmons, who not only lives in Connecticut, grew up in Connecticut, was educated in Connecticut, but represented this state in the United States Congress for, I don't know, 5 or 6 different terms. He was a CIA agent. He also worked in Hartford as business economic development. He's a really smart, well-rounded guy. He's been on this show, too, and
he's been here before. Again, we'll see how it works out. He's from a district that's not really well known. I mean, I know he's represented Connecticut for a long period of time. But we are talking about the 2nd district. It's not like it's not like a big population out there. Look, you see how geographically how big it is because the population is so small. We'll see what happens.
Hey, Chris Dodd certainly has name recognition. He's certainly, been unbeatable for years. But I think he's got some real questions to answer. I think the way he's tied into the economic downturn as a result of this mortgage and banking. I mean, 6 ways to Sunday. He's the #1 campaign contributors received cash from in the form of campaign contributions. I'm not saying there's anything underhanded with it, but it is pretty obnoxious that he's the #1 receiver from Freddie.
Well, we'll see. We'll let the voters decide on all that stuff. But again, I think there's a lot of you're just throwing a lot of stuff on the wall to see what really sticks, and I don't think a whole lot is really sticking. When you look at the poll numbers, you see that Rob Simmons is only up by about 4 to 5, maybe 6 points. But when you look at the internal numbers involved with that, and you see that the Republicans' number has been steady all the way through entire Chris Dodd's entire career in the Senate, just about. The Republicans' poll numbers have been about the same. The reason why Chris Dodd numbers are down against Simmons is not because of any Republican stuff. It's just because he lost Democratic votes. If he energizes his base, get his base back, it's game over. I mean, he's hit rock bottom in terms of poll numbers. He's only down by, 4 to 5 points to Rob Simmons with a year left to go. Yeah, we'll see what happens, but I just don't bank it all.
You're a student of history. The party that is out of the White House in the first election after the election of a president, what usually happens to that party?
You usually will have some droppage, which is to be expected, but that's usually in the House. The Senate is a whole different scenario. You're only elected once every 6 years, and the House is just every 2 years. That's a whole different ball game. Yeah. The Senate is completely different. But we'll see what happens.
Well, we'll see. I mean, he can't. He's been a senator for 35 years. He can't be in there forever. I think he's done some good things. I think his father before him was a prosecutor at the Nuremberg trials, which is very impressive. But I think Senator Dodd has a lot to answer for, and there are going to be some Republicans that will do well against him.
I'm just waiting to see. Is it going to be the lady who made her money off of TNA from wrestling, or is it the person that's not really around in Connecticut, or the guy from the 2nd district that's not really well known? But let's get to my video, by the way. I mean, we had all these drawings and stuff. So
let's go to the man himself.
Real quick, I was in a secret location this past Saturday.
Yeah, why don't you tell me where you did this interview? What's the big secret?
As I was saying, I was in a secret location.
It's like a goddamn hostage tape or something.
I was in a secret location this past Saturday. I had the opportunity to speak to Senator Dodd, who got together with a whole bunch of area bloggers, and we asked him every question under the sun. Obviously, health care was a major topic of concern, but we brought up some other stuff, including his new legislation he's trying to do in terms of FISA, where we stand with the Credit Card Act, and a few other topics in terms of credit. But for the most part, we really did talk a lot about health care. So,
did you ask some of the questions that we had put together at this table?
Well, as you look at the video clip, you'll see that, unfortunately, there was a lot of people there. So I only had the opportunity to get like 1 or 2 questions. And as you'll see in the video...
So you had a few... Well, we'll see.
Well, you'll see what happens. But look, without any further ado, because Marty's eating up a lot of the time, actually, if anybody was playing the over and the under, it's over today. All right, not under. The over-under was like 8 minutes. But without further ado, here is the video footage of the conversation I had with Senator Dodds. So if you can just run the video.
Today, we may be in a stronger position to actually debate on some of these things.
To go back to your talking about political capital is finite. The questions that my friends who are health professionals and frustrated that there isn't something moving on and there isn't a public, it looks like there won't be a public option.
Well, maybe. Don't give up, I'm not giving up.
But why, their question, and I don't have a good answer for them, I need an answer, is why is it that the president can't get the Democrats in the Senate in a room and lay the law down? The Republicans always seem to be able to keep their people in line, if you will. You know, when there's a decision made by the leadership, if you don't go along, there are consequences. I felt for a long time that this whole idea of sucking up to Joe Lieberman after he supported John McCain, it was very difficult for me to understand the point of that. So what can I tell my colleagues when they say to me, why can't the president just lay the law down to the Democrats? We worked so hard to get to 60 votes. What's the problem?
Well, a number of things. First of all, even the Republicans aren't as quite as united as I could think. Certainly Olympia Snowe and other people drive them crazy in terms of that. But I agree with you, generally speaking, they're more disciplined about that. We have a lot of people who come to wear the label of being a Democrat, come from parts of the country where their views are different. And it's always been a source of some frustration. We're a bigger tent in that sense. We're less narrowly defined in ways. We allow people to call themselves and to operate as Democrats, and they do on many issues. Ones that, such as we're talking about here with health care now, there's a resistance to it. They're not bad people. They reflect to a large extent maybe the feelings of their constituencies where they come from.
Except for Joe Lieberman.
No, as I say, they're different. I'm not suggesting, people have different views on this thing. But that's I'm trying to ask you a question.
Here's a basic question. Has the Democratic caucus, you guys meet every Tuesday, have you at least as a caucus, and every member of that caucus agreed that procedurally, nobody in that caucus will stop the health care bill? That's basically the biggest question in the world.
There was a good applause line the other day when it was raised saying we expect everybody procedural.
Exactly. That's what this is coming
You may have differences substantively, but get us to the point where we have a chance. And that
you can vote your conscience.
I looked around the room quick to make sure everyone was applauding.
You can vote your conscience, but procedurally, that's
going to be the goal.
Well, that's the goal right now. Harry Reid done his job.
He's doing the best he can here to keep these, frogs in a wheelbarrow. As you're going along, people jumping in and jumping out all the time. So it's procedurally, you're right. That's where it ought to be.
That's the biggest question.
Was everybody applauding?
Well, as I say, looking around at 60 people, 58 people at that point. Trying to scan the room quickly to see if it was.
What do you think the political price should be for Democrats to never go on procedural? Again, this is about supporting a Republican filibuster to defeat President Obama's legislation. What should it?
There's so many areas. You want to be careful about imposing such a restriction that you end up losing people that you're going to need. I would hope that people understand that this is a unique moment. That this is an opportunity to do something that has defied every administration, every Congress, almost a century. And we have a chance to make this is shameful. It's absolutely shameful. And I just went through this cancer surgery. I was telling a group this morning, you think you're in tough shape until you meet someone next to you. And I was telling them about the guy who was down the hall from me on the recovery. And he went through and had every lymph node taken out from his neck down, 42 years of age. He and his wife have a 7-year-old son who's off the spectrum of autism. And they care for her brother, who's in his mid-40s, who has a mental capacity of 6 years, and he's about to lose his job. Now, you explain to me why it is in a country with all it has that ought to happen to someone who goes through this. I mean, it's insane that people are going to see this. So we get through all the statistics and numbers and so on. So it's one of these things where you're dealing with a place in the Senate. I'm hopeful that we'll get people to understand that this is something you don't. I've made this speech so many times to the Democratic caucus, particularly the newer members. You may not get another chance to do something as significant as you will in the next 15 weeks.
Or a chance to destroy a presidency without it.
That's a political consideration. But far more important than the political considerations. I mean, presidents come and go. The fact of the matter is, we've got a chance to do something. It's the only piece of legislation I'll ever see where 100% of the population of this country will be affected by it. Other bills affect percentages, large or small. This is 100%. And it's here, it's in front of us. 4 out of 5 committees have acted. You can agree or disagree with pieces of this thing, and there'll be those debates that go along. But to deny us the opportunity here to now be able to sit there and decide what is going to be the framework on something as fundamental as a right to be able to be healthy, or at least to achieve health care, without bankrupting you in the process, or denying you the opportunity to get the best medicine available. It's just, again, to me, I get dumbfounded by the unwillingness of people to understand the moment. Whether or not you agree with every element of all of this, I respect the fact there can be disagreements legitimately about how best to do this. And I don't think anyone's cornered all the wisdom on the subject matter. But the idea that you deny us the opportunity even to debate that, I mean, I guess I'm trying to be elusive. I have all sorts of ideas in my mind to answer your question, but I don't want to limit myself to an answer I might give you.
Senator, can I bring up something in relation to the specifics on the Health Committee?
Sure.
After Senator Kennedy passed away, David Waldman and Jane Hampshire and I all wrote on an idea to take the name of the public option in the Health Committee bill, which is currently called the Community Health Insurance Plan. We love our chips for some reason. And name it for Senator Kennedy. Just the public option in just that bill, having it, been his committee, and thereby make it more difficult for any Democrat to oppose it.
That's a good idea. We're going to name the whole bill for it. But this way,
it may not be good enough for that.
Naming the bill is only a temporary thing that passes. If you name the public option the Kennedy option,
that's an intriguing idea.
You end up with a lasting legacy that's worthy of his name for what he fought for.
I mean, procedurally, how would that work? How could you do that?
I can call it anything I want.
You don't have to reopen the markup or anything.
No. And look, what's going to happen too in this, and again, I sometimes feel like it's so process-oriented that I bore everyone to tears. So let me just, this is what I do. Normally, Colleen or someone says you're going to glaze over the eyes of most determined listener when you get involved.
We're all policy wonks.
I can do this. I can do this.
Some of us actually watch like hours and hours of their markups.
Well, look, here's how this could happen in a positive way, and not just a question of naming a title of the bill. My point to Max is, look, get as strong a Democratic bill as you can out of your finance committee. Just get that done. Right? This has gone on too long. And then I've been guaranteed that I'm going to be one of the things, even though I went to the banking committee, stayed with that I can co-manage this bill on the floor. Other side. Then we're going to now then meld. Now this is hard to meld two bills, but we've written ours. Mine's been scored and written. So you don't have to rewrite the bill, you don't have to score it. I know my scores.
So you will be involved in reconciliation?
Well, if it gets to that, no, the reconciliation goes to the budget committee.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying.
Let's go. Let's assume this approach is going to work.
Okay.
So in effect, it would be like a mini conference, much as you might have with the House when I completed it.
Just in the Senate.
In the Senate.
Right.
So you have the two committees, and the White House will be at the table. And so we then can fashion this bill in a way that takes the best elements of what we've done with a larger group than a gang of 6 sitting around the table, to actually put something together that becomes the vehicle on the floor of the Senate. At that point, obviously naming sections of the bill or whatever else you can do.
Well, my idea is to do it before that, actually, to make it that much more difficult for Democrats on the Finance Committee to oppose.
So that would be a good idea. Maybe I'll talk to Senator Schumer or Senator others in the committee who are in favor of the public option to name it as such.
But you can do that with the Health Committee bill.
I'm done with my committee.
Right.
But when it comes into this melding process, you can do pretty much as you could at a conference. On a conference, theoretically, you're supposed to have, you can't do anything that hasn't been done to either one chamber or the other. But that rule has been broken on numerous occasions where something was in neither bill ends up in a conference. So I'm not suggesting that it'll be done with great frequency, but this is not a formal conference. This is not, there are no laws on what we're doing. This is rare to have 2 committees. And actually, the committee I was chairing has much more jurisdiction over health care. Than the Finance Committee. Now they have the jurisdiction over arguably the difficult parts dealing with Medicare, Medicaid, and pay fors, and tax policy. But all of the prevention, all of the quality, all of the workforce issues, and the coverage questions, the legitimate matters of jurisdiction of the Health Committee.
Is the House going to make you go first?
I wouldn't blame them.
I wouldn't blame them.
If I were in the House, I'd say absolutely. Make sure these guys are going to move.
Given that the voters voted Democrats in the majority in Congress, we have a Democratic president, we have a majority of the House and the Senate, and during the election in 2008, Democrats talked about health care reform with a public option. Seeing that the polls running up until August, wide range support for a public option.
Still is.
Still is. Why did we just lose the message, and why did Democrats allow this rabid misinformation from like socialized medicine, federal funded abortions, healthcare funding for illegal immigrants? How can the Democrats allow this, and the Congress allow this misinformation to happen to a point where there's people having doubt about health care, while now we're at a point where we're talking about no public option, but it's still a majority of people still want a public option?
Well, I suspect for some long time to come, people will go back and review the history of these last few weeks as to how we got. So make a judgment about how this happened. I'll admit, I'm giving you sort of almost a visceral reaction to what's happened rather than knowing all the details. Again, going back to the point I made earlier, there are moments you're given, and you either get things done. I can be patient. I was patient. Many of my colleagues thought too patient, but I decided I didn't want to give them the argument of saying you didn't get a chance to be heard. But you have to move. And let me say something that's anathema to a lot of people. I welcome partisanship. The reason we exist as a country is because of partisanship. There's nothing wrong with partisanship. Civility is a legitimate issue. And the absence of civility is bothersome to me and outrageous. And I would defend with my right, with my life rather, the right of people to get up and have abusive signs and other things they show up. That's their right. I would never, as much as it may hurt personally to have to hear some of this stuff, I would defend them with my life to be able to do so. But having a partisan debate, that's how we exist. We existed because there was a partisan debate. There wasn't one view on how this was going to work. So this notion of bipartisanship, while it's certainly a means to an end and can help you, and I don't deny that when you can get it, it's not an end in itself. And when you end up becoming preoccupied with that as your goal, then both substance fails and politics fails. And both failed in this case because there was a preoccupation with that goal. And bipartisanship can occur any way in a process. I've been around this to watch it. Sometimes you get bipartisanship when you introduce your bill. It's such a good idea, everyone wants to be a part of it. And that's a great moment. They don't have to much of a battle, everyone agrees it's a great idea. Sometimes bipartisanship occurs in the subcommittee level. Sometimes in the full committee level. Sometimes it doesn't occur until you get to the final step in a process. Sometimes never. But this idea that you had to achieve it at the get-go on this thing is I think, was a huge mistake. Now, this again acquired skills. I can tell when I sit down, I presume many of you can as well, when someone's sitting with it. We all do it in our families, we do it in our business, and we do it all the time. When someone's serious about reaching some common ground or when they're not. It doesn't take long to usually figure that out. And it was quite clear to me pretty early on that at this stage in the process, you weren't going to get that. And so instead of trying to constantly try to achieve something that was unachievable, and rather get something done, get it on the table, get this thing working, we didn't have a bill. So the other side had a pretty good case to make. So they could bring up death panels, they didn't exist, but nor did a bill. and so as long as you're talking about it in a vacuum, you couldn't claim they were illegitimate because there was nothing legitimate to argue for, at least out of that committee. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's why...
With 5 different committee bills, we're still sort of in a vacuum.
Well, I thought we had a very good bill for somebody. No one ever talked about it.
Yes.
I couldn't get people to talk about these shows. No one. Here we had spent all this time crafting a good, balanced bill with public option, all these other things, kept costs down, a lot of prevention, a lot of quality, good stuff on the thing. I couldn't get anybody.
Doesn't bring ratings.
But that's the other point. That's another point. Yeah, I agree with that.
Just one quick follow-up. I went to a lot of these Tea Party protests in the last few months. I have a colleague that I work with who's a rabid Republican. But I went to the 9/11 Tea Party in Bridgeport. I saw a lot of disturbing symbols, socialism, Nazism associated with President Obama. A lot of what I would consider disturbing remarks about yourself being said by some of these people. Are you concerned about the tone that out there in the country by some people who are opposed to you or President Obama in terms of like socialism, Nazism, racist remarks? 9/11, I saw at this 9/11 rally, I saw people doing a kick line. They rewrote the words to New York, New York, to make it a partisan thing. Now this is on 9/11. I didn't think we can ever get to a point that we'd be doing partisan political rallies on 9/11.
No.
What are your thoughts about the tone that's out there and just?
Well, it's not unique. You know, I suspect all of you here are pretty good students of history, and there have been ugly times in our history. The difference between those times and this time is the ability to communicate is substantially enhanced. I mean, the power to be able to have a message, fly across the country, around the world instantaneously is very different. Although certainly the stuff that Lincoln went through, or that other political figures have in times during periods of great national debate, have seen some pretty ugly stuff in the past. Now, the difference is you can communicate it, and there's a danger. You create environments. And what I suspect there are always elements in our society that are going to do that. What bothers me, in a way, is that there are institutions that see this as sort of part of their financial gain. One of you just said it was absolutely correct. Planes, the news media doesn't report about planes that fly. And again, I understand they're not going to, but the point is when all you ever want to report about is the things that are not working, or what's wrong, and then appeal. In a time when people are losing their homes, losing their jobs, losing their retirement, losing their health care, it is a scary time for people, and they are worried. And I understand that. And they're frightened. And what not about to happen to them, what happens to their kids, their family, whether or not everything's falling apart. So when you have people out there fanning those flames, that fear and anger are the easiest emotions to arouse. The more difficult ones are the better angels. So those are the hard ones to bring up and sustain, particularly when things are going south on you. And so I'm less inclined to fault someone who's out there saying something stupid than I am those major media outlets who seem to revel in it and add to it and throw fuel on it every night. That, to me, that is where I think. And look, we are a very civilized people, but we've seen historically, quote, civilized people do some unimaginable things as societies.
I have time for one more hard question.
Yeah, sometime we ought to just have a conversation just on this subject.
It's just because I've been out there doing it.
I feel very deeply about it. And look, I'm going to stay in this fight. I'm going to stay. I want to join this. I can't wait for this fight out there. And I don't know who's going to be opponents, whatever else. But I have a feeling maybe I spent all this time for just this moment. And I can't wait. I don't mind if people want to run against me. That's their right. It's a democracy. It's really. I'd have a lot more respect if they were doing so because they disagreed with me on health care. They disagreed with me on financial reform. They thought my ideas on overdrafts or credit cards were wrong. Fine, I get that. Let's have a good debate. This is all because they said they had a chance to win a title. It's about wanting the job to do the thing, you know. And so I'm looking forward to it because we need to have this in our state.
Wrestling, though.
It is. It's not like a wrestling. It's what it is. The way it's all about me. I'm not the issue. Candidates aren't the issue. Candidates come and go. Candidates do fine after elections, win or lose. It's what happens to the people out there who are counting on someone going down to fight on health care, to fight on these other issues, standing up. And not because you're right every time. It doesn't mean you agree with somebody all the time. But who do you want in your corner down there when this stuff comes up?
Well, welcome back to Ideas at Work and Beyond. There you had it, our senator. I mean, he seems like a rather thoughtful guy. Like I said at the beginning, you know, Senator Dodd, the senator from Connecticut. It seems like when the sun comes up, it's just, he is our senator. His father was a senator beforehand. And I suppose he's done some good things. But I think this time, as we talked about, 2 years, yeah, there's his father. His father is actually an interesting story. He was one of the prosecutors at the Nuremberg trials, and he ran for Senate and first lost to none other than George Bush's grandfather.
Prescott Bush.
Prescott Bush beat Chris Dodd's father for the Senate race, and then Dodd ran again. Chris Dodd's father ran again 2 years later and won. And he later got entangled with that dastardly Republican McCarthy, and I think he was censured by the Senate. So rather interesting story, rather interesting, you know, almost political nobility here in Connecticut. But I don't know. There's change in the air. 2 years after the party that wins the White House, usually the other party does pretty good. Think in terms of Newt Gingrich, contract with America 2 years after Bill Clinton was elected, and then they introduced all the great policies and legislation that Bill Clinton got credit for. So that's how our democracy works, and it's a wonderful thing. And I think Chris Dodd is vulnerable. But enough with the highfalutin federal level politics. I think Al, good job getting the cameras there at the undisclosed location.
Undisclosed location.
Appreciate your questions. I wouldn't say that you know, they were as hard hitting as they might be.
Well, now remember, we saw a very small segment of the entire it was like over an hour long. In fact, if you want to see more video clips from that entire thing, or if you want to see the entire thing, you can go to my website, hatcityblog.com. You can watch the whole thing there. You might see some more interesting questions being asked out of our senator there.
So I think what you're saying is, if you want to see a really softball interview with a liberal Democrat senator, they should go to your blog. If they want to have an experience reading a book called Experiencing God, you should come to my Sunday school class. Wouldn't you say that's the case?
Okay.
Okay. All right, enough about that. We're delighted to have Matt Knickerbocker join us. Thank you very much. Thank you for putting up with the show so far. I appreciate you coming in. And my opening question for you is, what in the world has possessed you to want to run for the first selectman position in Bethel, Connecticut?
You got that from my wife, right?
I have. Matter of fact, we've been texting, and she says, try to talk him out of it on the show, so I'm going to do my best.
She did that a few months ago. It's too late, but it was a good try.
You're in.
Good try, right.
Okay.
Why am I doing this? Well, as my wife observed, I kind of have a pathological desire to get involved in things, see how I can help, bring my management experience from 35 years of business management to bear and try to do some good. As you know, I'm a 10-year member of the Board of Education. I joined the Board of Ed in Bethel and ran for it for the first time during a period of time when our schools really needed some help. There were some issues that needed to be dealt with, and let me preface that by saying we have always had great staff and great teachers, great administrators in Bethel, but there needed to be some focus. There were some definite problems. We can go into numbers later if you want to, but it's kind of ancient history. But I thought, you know, with a business background, I think I can I can do my part as part of a team to bridge gaps, to kind of bring down the partisan rhetoric and get people working together. And I think that that my colleagues on the board, and there have been, I don't know, something like 20 of them, and as the boards have changed over the last 10 years, have done extraordinary work. And today Bethel boasts a school system that is arguably one of the finest in the state as a result.
So you've been on the school, the Board of Ed for 10 years.
Yep.
When you came there, what were one or two of the biggest challenges that you've seen addressed over the last 10 years?
Boy, that's there's a litany. When I joined the board, when I was sworn in on December 6th, I think, 1999, shortly after that election, the high school, Bethel High School, had just been put on academic warning status by the NEASC, which is the New England Association of Schools and Colleges.
Wow.
So now a few years later, they went to a full probation status because of the condition of the building, which was a separate issue.
Right.
But being on academic warning was a bad thing. That was a big wake-up call.
Sure.
Now, there were some issues before that I'd actually been working for about 3 or 4 years prior to that, volunteering for parent committees and getting involved in curriculum review committees, because my perception of the school system was that our kids were lacking some opportunities. The CMT scores, and I'm not one of those big believers that CMT scores or whatever, standardized tests, should drive every single thing,
right.
But they were not good. We were at the bottom of our reference group, what they called at the time the ERG, Economic Reference Group. We were not doing well across the board, SATs and so on.
So the school wasn't performing, and then
Right.
you also had this building issue too, which didn't help situation.
Right. Right.
So then how did you see it progress over the last 10 years?
Well, we and I'm gonna give my my colleagues, the ones who are currently on the board, and the past colleagues, just a ton of credit. A really high-performing school system starts with a board that knows what his job is, and the job is developing policies for the implementation of the programs and the curriculum, and setting rigorous goals and following up on those goals. And basically, it's a business management proposition.
So not so much the day-to-day operation, the management on a daily basis.
I'll tell you what, that's the last thing that you should do as a board member, and that's where a lot of new board members get tripped up. They think that's their job, and their job is to set the goals and evaluate the performance of the people who are responsible. It's basic accountability. That's what we've done.
By the way, the phone number here is 792-4101, 792-4101. If you have a question for Mr. Knickerbocker, don't hesitate to call. We always have a priority on callers that come in. Do you think the first selectman, Bob Burt, gets any credit for getting the school project built?
Sure.
Did that help?
Sure. Yeah,
so that was a good thing.
Yeah. Now, truth be told, prior to the referenda, the second referendum in particular, actually before the first one, he fought very hard against that project. He published numerous letters in the paper. I'm going to pick out the number 6, but it might be higher than that actually, where he fought quite hard to defeat that project. But that's I don't fault him for that. That's part of the normal discourse in an open democratic society. Once that second referendum was passed, and it passed by a 70% to 30% margin, his obligation as first selectman was to get it done. He did so. It was good.
You had profound insight into Bethel politics.
Well, real quick, I know that you sat back and watched well, you didn't sit back and just eat popcorn like I like to say, but you sat back and watched the bloodbath go between this Republican primary, which was pretty intense at some points in time. But, while you're watching that going on, I'm sure you're doing a lot of door knocking, a lot of talking to a lot of the residents in Bethel.
Yes.
When you're out there knocking doors and pressing palms, what are you hearing back from the residents about some of the issues they have about the town?
It kind of depends on which neighborhood we're talking about. Let me start with District 2, which that's the Stony Hill area. My walk sheets, to your point, are there's about 10 lines on each sheet with where I can take notes, and they say roads, 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 roads.
Stony Hill roads.
Roads, roads, roads.
Yeah.
They are not happy campers.
No, they're not.
They are extremely unhappy. Some people are willing to give the current administration the benefit of the doubt and say, yeah, well, what are you going to do? There's not a lot of money. Others are saying, why have I waited a year, 2 years, 3 years, and what's the story? Was it not included in the sewer bid? Some of it is pertaining to that. Or was it never intended to be repaved once the sewers went in? They don't know, and that's the problem. They do not know what has gone wrong, and they don't know when it's going to be fixed. And that's something that I want to address right away.
All right.
What about some of the other districts?
It kind of depends. In some
Say you go up to a house where there's a red Bob Burke sign on the lawn, and you march up there, you know, and you knock on the door. What's the reaction?
I've actually had two reactions come up in about equal numbers. Some of them say, "I'm concerned about the schools. We want to we have a good quality system now. We want to maintain that." So they're worried about the economic conditions that we're in today, forcing more layoffs as we move forward. Mm-hmm. They don't want to see that happen. Other people are concerned about taxes, and that's, to my surprise, I have not heard that universally. That's what I was expecting, mm-hmm. but I haven't really heard that. I've heard that in some areas, and where I do hear it, it's usually in places where people have been really hit by the property revaluations, not so much by the increase in town spending per se. Mm-hmm. You know, there is a concern about that as well. They want to keep that down. They want a responsible administration. But where I really hear a complaint is where, say, over the last 10 years, people's property taxes have tripled because of the housing bubble and the revaluation process. Yeah. That's like a different issue, really. Okay. But it's on their mind.
Well, let me just bring up something real quick. You have the current administration right now. Bob Burke is currently the first selectman. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me something that he's doing that you might not agree with? And if you were elected as first selectman, how would you do that particular thing differently?
Yeah, there is a proposal that is sitting with the Board of Selectmen right now, and this dates back to early spring, I believe, to privatize the Bethel Transfer Station. And there was one article in the News Times about this some time ago, but it really hasn't ignited the public consciousness yet. But boy, it should, because what this plan would do in a nutshell is either sell or transfer operation of the transfer station, otherwise known as the dump, mm-hmm. which many of us frequent every Saturday morning, and chat with the guys there, a great crew. It would privatize it, it would expand the operation, and it would allow the dumping of demolition and construction debris in that facility. And we're talking about a lot of stuff. The current load limit on that facility right now is up to 50 tons per day. That's the limit. This would, according to the papers I have from Town Hall, when you add the construction and demolition debris, that would go up to 450 tons per day. Plus, this area sits on an aquifer, and it sits right next to a very environmentally sensitive wetland. The proposal says that they would have to bring in a rail spur to cart all this stuff away. The rail spur would have to go over the wetland, and then to really bring it down to a concrete level for our residents in Bethel, I don't want to see a convoy of garbage trucks going through town every day, and the weight crushing the roads. All you have to do is go out to 84 and look at what traffic does to the
come out to Newtown Road, White Street in Danbury.
Yes,
you can see you've got a transfer station in Danbury. It takes a lot of tonnage.
Yes, so the town does need more revenue, but if that facility is not operating at least a break even, we have to find a way to do that. But I'll tell you what. Privatizing it is not the answer. That's a quality of life issue that I am absolutely dead set against.
Let's crunch some numbers here. How many registered Republicans are there in Bethel? How many registered Democrats? And how many unaffiliated or independent?
I don't know those answers off the top of my head.
Oh, come on. You're running for first selectman. You got to know those answers. You haven't been at least a little interested? They're right there in Town Hall. You can know them.
Well, they've changed a lot in leading up to the Republican primary. So what I'd heard was that I didn't want to guess because I'd heard different numbers. I'm not sure what they are. But
do you know the numbers?
There's like 2,400 registered Dems, I think.
Yeah, he's correct. A lot of people switched over for the primary.
Yeah. So there's about 2,400 Democrats. How many Republicans? Round numbers. I'm not going to hold you to it. It's not like we're on TV.
And you're not recording this either, right?
Totally recorded. This is for discussion purposes.
I'm going to pull out 2,600.
So about 2,600 Republicans, and then how many unaffiliated or independents?
That would be like around 6,000.
6,000. So the overall majority, so that's where the battle is going to be won or lost, is in that independence. Would
Yes.
that be? All right, so...
unaffiliated, because independent in Bethel is an actual party.
Okay. So I guess the math is the Republicans either split or go 2/3 one way, 1/3 the other. You pick up all the Ds, and then you pick up half the unaffiliated, and you're good to go. Is that the plan?
I have heard that plan spoken.
Don't be coy with us. We're letting you know, this is it doesn't make you a bad person that you've looked at this stuff. You're out there knocking on the doors. You're putting your name on the line.
That's right. And let me tell you what I've learned in 10 years of dealing with the public on the Board of Ed. Never try to guess what they're going to do.
That's true.
So I am running like I am an underdog. I have been knocking since late June. We have been working it hard. I've been doing literally 7 days a week, meet and greets at night, parties, campaigning at the dump, you name it, I'm doing it. I get to do it till November 2nd.
Someone needs a fourth for bridge, you're there?
I can't play bridge.
Okay. Now, is there a website or someone wants to get in touch with you?
Yes.
Our
website is www.mattandrich2009.com. I know it's kind of long, but there it is. mattandrich2009.com.
Okay,
and you can reach us there.
We're going to have a show here on election night, so we're going to be getting the returns coming in, and I, for one, am going to be fascinated to see how this all shakes out.
I'm going to be in Bethel.
There's certainly some colorful characters. Are you going to be out in the field?
I'm going to be in Bethel.
Okay,
I'm skipping Danbury. I'm going to Bethel.
There's someone else who has a show here who's going to be out calling in.
It's a mad scene on those Tuesdays.
It'll be but I'll be very interested in seeing how it all shapes out.
You and me both.
We've actually had I think now all three candidates involved here. We're trying to put together a three-way debate. Would you be willing to come in and debate if we can get the other folks here?
We'll discuss it.
We'll discuss it. See, we get a lot of that. Who's going to be there? We actually had our phone lines jammed one time when we were here. Mysteriously, the phones didn't work right before the show, and after the show ended, they popped up again. It's something having to do with robocalls.
Hey, I'm staying out of it.
You can't believe it.
It's Bethel.
But we'd love to have a debate. If all three of you would like to come in, we'd love to put that together.
Let me ask you a real fast question, real quick. How do you stay above the fray? There's a lot of stuff, mudslinging and stuff going on. How do you stay above all that?
A couple things. Number one, I don't read the blogs.
Yeah.
And I just stay focused on my message. I'm going to hear a lot of things. Some people are not going to like me. That's politics. So I just keep talking about my message. We want to develop Bethel economically, to keep taxes low, improve the base.
All right, perfect.
Matt Knickerbocker, thank you very much for
Thanks,
coming
Marty.
on. Wish you all the luck in the world. Join us next week when we may have Rudy Marconi.
Yes.
Now, you're saying you're going to bring him in.
I'm working on it.
Okay, we may have Rudy Marconi on, who potentially is going to be our next governor. You never know.
Never know.
And then after that, there's a lot of other stuff. Rob Merkel, a guy who played football at Notre Dame, is also running for Congress. And we can also have Rob Simmons.
Yeah, why not?
So good night, and we'll see you next time on Ideas at Work and Beyond. Thanks for joining us.